Welcome to Heartistry. This is Farah, Yasmeen, Shaikh, and I am thrilled to have not just one, but two guests on today who happen to be mother and daughter, as we just heard a little bit about. But without further ado, please join me in welcoming Saman and Maha Khan to Heartistry.
Thank you so much for having us, Farah.
Thank you,
Th-
Vera. It's a pleasure
Thank
being here.
you. Well, it is a joy to be in conversation with both of you. And Saman, you are in Lahore, Pakistan.
Yes, I
And
am.
yes, and Maha, you are in New York. So, and
That's right.
I am sitting here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we are in three different time zones. And yet here we are making it work. And that is the beauty of this virtual world that we now all live in.
Yep,
Well,
that's right.
I would love, we are certainly going to get into this, company that the two of you run together and learn more about how that came to be, more about the company itself. But I always love to really start a little bit with the origin story of my guests. And so, someone, I would love to hear a little bit about you. Where were you born, brought up? We'll then go over to Maha and eventually we'll get to the present, but certainly no rush.
Sure, sure, would love to. Um, I was born in Quetta, Pakistan, and I've spent all my life in Pakistan. Moved around a lot in the entire country because my father was in the army, so he got posted everywhere. So I moved around. But then after I got married, I settled in Lahore, had three children, and was a stay-at-home mom. But as the kids grew older, I decided that I wanted to do something. So I started a clothing line, which I think I had that for about 6 years. But
Okay.
then I wanted to pursue something more meaningful. So I went on to work for a nonprofit for about 5 years.
In
But
Pakistan,
again, when
a
in Lahore,
Pakistan-based
yes,
nonprofit.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it was a nonprofit that was based in the US, but it had
Oh,
its chapters in Lahore. It was an educational nonprofit.
okay.
Um,
Which one, if I may ask? My
It was
family.
developments in literacy,
Yes,
DIL.
Dil, of course.
Yeah,
Yes, my
yeah, yeah.
family is very involved with TCF. So
Oh,
that's,
okay,
I was
okay,
wondering.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But then I wanted to go back in the consumer space, and I thought I didn't have the necessary skills set. So once I became a grandmother, I decided to go back to grad school and do my
Amazing.
MBA. Yes, and I was the only grandma on campus, I think. So that was a lot of fun and a very great learning experience. And Maha was doing
Beautiful.
her MBA at the same time, so we were both
How cool.
yeah. So I was doing it in Lahore and Maha was in America, so she was doing it in the US. And we managed to finish at approximately the same time, and we started to look at different projects.
Ah,
So, and we weren't even talking to each other at that time as much. We were both looking for partners. I was looking for one in Lahore, and Maha was in New York. And one day I was talking to my husband, and he goes, "Why don't you just talk to Maha about this?" And he said the same thing to
right.
Maha. And we were like, oh, wow, that was supposed to be our, eureka moment that, oh, yes, we should be. And that's how we became partners. And it's been really great since then and
Amazing.
really enjoying it. And it's a lot of fun working together.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are certainly going to pick up where you left off. But before that, let's just hear a little bit about so obviously you're with your mother being
That's right.
someone we you fill in the blanks from your perspective and your particular journey.
Sure. So I showed up when my mother was in Lahore, settled. And I'm the youngest of her three kids.
Okay.
And I lived in Pakistan till I was 15, actually. So
Okay.
I left Pakistan to come to the US. My family, so Saman and my father, stayed back in Lahore. Initially started at boarding school, and then went to college, started a career in finance in New York, which we can get into as well if you'd like. But I mean, it was a great experience. I think it's wonderful to work with such, hardworking and motivated people. But I think for me, we have a sort of family history in entrepreneurship. And
Yeah.
my father is an entrepreneur. Both my brothers started a company together, and that was always an itch that I had.
Okay.
So literally going through the same thing that someone was going through, what's the next step in my career? I was going through the same thing, and we both decided to
Yeah.
pursue MBAs and figure out, what would life as an entrepreneur look like. So in came Seenaya and my partner Saman, and that eureka conversation with my father.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's so cool is that honestly, even reading a little bit about your journey ahead of time now, hearing from both of you, yeah, it is quite surprising that it wasn't something that you always sort of knew would happen collectively, considering
No.
that it existed within your familial space, and
Yes.
so that's what I love. I love the spontaneity of it, even though once you said your eureka moment, that light bulb moment, it also probably felt like, oh gosh, why didn't we think of this sooner, right?
You're totally
That's
right.
true.
I mean, for me, I would always joke because my brothers had started a company together. I'd be like, "Well, I'm out of siblings to start a company with, so what do I do?" And I, it's just an interesting, mother-daughter is always interesting, as I always look up to my mother so much, and I think it wasn't as much of like a partnership, and so that was just like a different
Ah,
way of thinking about it that I think my father introduced, which I'm very, very grateful for sure, because we bring such different perspectives. I mean, even when we're sitting in a meeting, of course, she raised me and we have a lot of similar values and things like that, but our experiences are wildly different.
Yes.
And the way
yeah.
we think about business, I mean, even the product development process, our marketing, everything is so different that I think it just actually became a really, really beautiful partnership. Yeah.
It's also
Ah,
the age factor.
yeah.
She's so much younger. So
Let's go ahead and take our first pause here. I certainly want to continue on this track, but let's take a quick pause. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Sheikh, and today we are in conversation with Saman Khan and Maha Khan, mother and daughter, and we're hearing, excuse me, a little cough here. It is cold season, and I am certainly getting over mine. So, one moment. Okay. So, here we are. We're talking about, this again, spontaneous idea, spontaneous in that, coming together to collaborate. So, you were talking about who and how to sort of form this partnership with. You decided on each other. Amazing. And well, actually, I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Maha, you were mentioning you were in finance. What about that was not serving you?
Oh gosh, where do I start? So I think, Farah, I will start out by talking about the positives of it. I think that, my first week in finance, like I worked 100 hours. And I think when you work that much on something, and it wasn't as much the anomaly, that was a common thing that a lot of, junior people in finance, I think, see. And I think it really, really taught me just like a very strong work ethic, how to be focused. But I think eventually what wasn't serving me was, I think it was a little bit too cutthroat for me.
Mm,
Quite frankly, I think that a lot of the people I worked with have served as fantastic mentors, but I think the general um, environment wasn't, I think, somewhere where I thought that I could personally grow. I think
mm,
I also definitely struggled with the fact that I was the only woman in the room.
huh.
Um, and I don't like to think that I ran away from that. I think I learned a lot from that. I mean, I grew up with two older brothers. On my mom's side, there's nine cousins, and I'm the only woman. So I'm
Well,
not,
yeah.
I have been surrounded by men my entire life, but there was something about that where I thought that, I never felt like I had a partner in crime or just a buddy at
An
work.
ally, would you say?
An ally, that's the word I'm looking
Mm,
for. Exactly. And I think that is something that I really struggled with. And to be honest, I think I used to work in investment banking for a few years, and then I switched to private equity. And you're kind of going from project to project. And I think my personality vibes much better with working on one project, one idea, and really putting my soul into it. I think the idea of, working on something that's you can only take so far, and then you have to kind of let it go in a way,
True.
what's
Yeah.
really driving well with me, which I think people who, have more, I think need more excitement almost. I mean, I think they would jive very well with that. But for me, I think it just wasn't doing that. And
Mm,
so I think the working on one project, working on one idea, I think vibes very well with something like entrepreneurship.
yeah.
And so that's kind of the thought process. And I will
Sure.
say, obviously, seeing my father and my brothers do it, I
Yeah.
mean, it
And you'd
definitely,
even seen your mom in the clothing industry, right? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, just from such a young age, I've seen entrepreneurship in such different ways, from turning it into a big business, turning it into, something that's more a small business, doing it on the side. Like I've just seen it in so many different capacities, and I really
Yeah.
wanted to make it work for me because the flexibility is so important. I just felt like I had no flexibility in my life when I was working in finance.
Sure.
That being said, I would never give it up. I know it sounds crazy, but I think
No,
I
that's fair.
learned
Yeah.
so much from that experience and gained, mentors and honestly friends that I'm still
Mm,
very close to. It's kind of like you go to war together and you kind of,
right. Right.
yeah.
Well, someone I'm very curious also, a little context to the question that I'm about to ask you. I was born and brought up here in the US,
Mhm.
and my parents were from Pakistan. They were both born pre-partition in Bombay, but then moved to Pakistan just in 1948. So just
Okay.
post-partition. And anyway, grew up in Pakistan. So a lot of trips back home when we were children to visit my nanny ma and other family. And over the past decade, I've been going very consistently to Pakistan for my own work as a dancer, teaching, performing. And part of that work is shining a spotlight on all the amazing aspects of Pakistan, Pakistani society, people who are really pushing against, the narrative, sometimes well-founded narrative in the truthful narrative, whether
Mhm.
it's about societal the way society imposes especially gender roles and or things related to the way religion is used to hold people back, et cetera, et cetera. So I try to, you know, hold accountable what is not, in my perspective, okay, and holding people back, and also say, but there are so many people doing amazing work. Anyway, I
Yeah.
qualify that only to say I am curious to know about your journey as a woman, as an entrepreneur. You've mentioned again your husband, your sons. Here you were a stay-at-home mother at one point, as you mentioned. You were in an industry previously. You worked for an
Mhm.
NGO or a nonprofit. Um, all of these different things, but I'm just curious, was it always something that you were very always encouraged to do? I don't want you to lead you into answering one way or the other, because I think your truth is your truth, but I want to shine a light on whatever that truth is, just to make sure that that's heard and known.
To be honest, I think it was a different time. Like the women of my age or my generation, there was hardly anyone I knew who had gone abroad to study
Hmm.
or who was really working outside the home. So it
Mm-hmm.
was very common. So it was not something that I even thought of. I
Huh.
grew up going to college, going to school, and getting married and having kids was the norm of the day. So I never
Sure.
even thought outside that. So maybe I wasn't thinking outside the box or whatever, but it never came to my mind at that time. But once my kids were older and my husband was very encouraging, he encouraged me to study as much as I wanted to because I got married after high school. So I graduated after I got married. I did my MBA so later on. So he was very encouraging, and I think that is what really helped me. He always told me, "No, you can do this. This is
Yeah.
something." And I was like, "Who's going to give the GMAT?" It was like it wasn't, even little challenges like that were a
Sure.
lot for me. So
Yeah.
so it a matter of the societal pressure or anything. It was just that's how I was raised. Again, my parents also migrated from India when partition took place, and so that's how they were. I feel that every generation needs to improve on the previous one. So they did much better for their children than what they had seen as children.
Yeah.
But then, every generation has to change. So that's why, hence, Maha went abroad to study. She lives
Yeah.
there. So that's how it worked out for me very well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, coming back to your partnership, you decided you're going to do something together, but how did you decide the what?
That is a great question. So I think a little bit of career background first, and then obviously personal.
Please, yeah.
So we talked about entrepreneurship in the family. My father actually was in the consumer goods space. My brothers are, more in the technology software space, but they work a lot with consumer goods. And when I was in finance, I was working a lot with consumer goods companies. Someone had started the fashion line. So this idea of consumer and working with something that was, just something physical that you give to customers, I think was something that really drove us. That's just, our personality. We wanted to
Yeah.
make physical good to put in the customer's hand and to wash and use
Mm,
it. Something very gratifying about that. But I think skincare in particular, I mean, Farah, I'm sure you know this as well, but in Pakistani culture, I mean, Saman and I grew up. I mean, every Sunday was, our hair rituals. It was the oil and
Yeah.
Saman's
yeah.
very secret, not so secret because everyone knows it now. Hair mask with like egg and yogurt, lemon, and all that good stuff. And even it's such a big part of culture. Like I remember in middle school, like even as girls, you're talking about, oh, I tried this on my pimple today and this on my pimple. And I would come home and put honey on the pimple, and half the time it would get
Yeah.
big. It's such a big part of our culture. I think it was always kind of there, and I think when we started talking about our family history and things like that, I think skincare and beauty was very rooted in our family history. So
Mm.
my great grandmother, actually Saman's grandmother, had her own book of skincare recipes,
Oh, wow.
back when,
Yes.
which was lost at the time. Like we have no idea where it was, but it sent us on this journey of talking to family members who knew her better, and ask them about what was in this. And it just became this beautiful journey of not just
Mm.
rediscovering these beauty rituals, but like rediscovering almost family history a little bit.
Yeah.
And I will say we draw a lot of inspiration from my great grandmother. Someone can talk more about her. She spent, all her summers as a kid with her. But I think just the career definitely was like a spark that we already knew a little bit about the consumer goods space, but the actual rooted passion is really in the culture and then the family and just this book of recipes that sent us on a journey that really led us to skincare and wanting to work on skincare.
Ah,
Yeah, that's for sure.
beautiful.
Because my
Someone, do you
grandmother, we used to
mind?
call her.
Sorry. Can we take our quick pause and then I definitely want to hear about your
Sure,
grandmother, but I'd hate to cut
sure,
that off.
sure,
So perfect.
sure.
Thank you. Welcome back to Heartistry. I am speaking today with Maha and Saman Khan. And Saman, you were going to tell us a little bit about that very history that Maha was talking about with your grandmother. So please do share.
Yes, this is my maternal grandmother I'm talking about. We used to call her Bia.
Mm,
And although I said that, in my generation, there was hardly anyone working outside the home, the women especially, but she was one lady who was an entrepreneur way beyond her times. This was
huh,
the late 60s and 70s, and she was the only entrepreneur we had in the family. Others were doing other things, but she was the only one. And she had her own lines of jams and jellies, and we would visit her in the summer, and my brother and I, we would label her jams and jellies, and then she would then box them and take them to the stores. So that was the really interesting part about the summers in Karachi when we used to visit her. and she would make her creams and oils for hair and everything. So that was so fascinating, and we tried to discover more of that, but somehow all the recipes got lost. But still,
Huh.
we managed something by talking to other relatives, as Maha just said. So that was a lot of fun. As children, we remembered, going there and getting involved in all the things that she was making there with her own hands. So it all
Mm,
boils down to, doing things with your own hands. Although it's a big risk also, it's because a 9 to 5 job has the security that you need. This is
sure.
really risky. Like you can't sleep at night. Maha and I sometimes are like, what will happen if this doesn't go through? What will happen if
Right.
this doesn't go through? So we're worried about that. So sometimes you have sleepless nights, but then the rewards are there too. You're your own
Mm.
master and you do whatever you want to do. So
I
that's how it
I
has been.
I get that. It is like you are constantly, your mind is constantly on when you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur for most,
Mhm.
and yet there is when you can find that sweet spot, even it sometimes, and this is something I'm personally adopting more and more, I'd say, since the latter part of last year, that it's okay. It's okay to let go sometimes and
Yes.
just relax. And this is what I've worked so hard for, to essentially be accountable to myself. Um, and so it's okay, and so it is that interesting push pull, and knowing when to tap into one or the other, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think Farah, this is also where a little bit of the generational difference comes in, because I think I'm usually the one who's calling her and being like, "No, what's gonna happen? And if this happens, and if this happens, and this will happen." And I still remember she just has this like one line that she always says to me, and she's like, "Maha, there are bigger things in life to stress about." So I try to remind myself that when I'm freaking out about a little, design flaw or
yeah,
something delayed, that it's like, no, there's bigger things in life to stress about. So she's definitely the calm presence in this partnership.
amazing.
She's being humble and making us both sound a little crazy. I'm the crazy one.
Yeah, well, I certainly, I really do want to talk more about, like, uncovering the details about the company, but I can't help, this keeps coming to my mind. Okay, beautiful mother-daughter co-founded company, but I have a teenage daughter right now, and I would love for her at some point to have this desire to work with me, and who knows, but I also can imagine that, at least in our dynamic, a lot of challenges come from that. And even,
Mhm.
again, very different, but just even I have a crossover relationship with her of being her mother and her teacher. And so anytime we sort of have these dual roles, my parents worked together all their lives. And I now really marvel at that even more, to say, my God, to be together all day at the office and then to come home and run this family and still have a pretty darn healthy, loving relationship between the two of them. How do you traverse that? And I can't help, Maha, but notice you often are referring to your mother in her first name. And even that, and like, I get it, it's not at all a judgment. And it's also like, how was that transition?
Well, we actually had that conversation yesterday, and I
Conversation.
asked her, like, I thought it would be a little weird if I was constantly referring to her as my mother. So we went with Saman.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But
But yeah.
the the one thing that was really, and I think someone will have a lot of insight to add, but just to kick it off, I think for us, and I learned this from my brothers, I think that the way that they've run their company and the way that they've kept their relationship together, I think it has been an inspiration. Like I think I've always looked up to them my entire life, but when they started this company together, I was like, wow, like this is how a partnership is supposed to be. And
Mhm.
you know, one of my oldest brother said, and I think this sticks with me so much, it's your family relationship, like your mother-daughter relationship, no matter what, it always comes before your business relationship.
Mm.
And that's kind of how he did it with my brother. And that's, I think, something that my mother and I have talked about. And no matter what, everything just comes down to that. And in a way, it actually helps to look at the business that way. It constantly reminds you that there's bigger things in life. And
Mm.
don't get me wrong, like we need this company to work. Like, we cannot
Yeah.
I cannot be in this country, all these things if this company doesn't work out. So it does tend to feel big and overwhelming and stressful. But I think keep in mind that, look, this is my mother and our relationship is the most important thing, no matter what decision we're making. I think it's just an important thing to always have in the background. But I'm sure someone has a lot more.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. And also, the biggest thing is I know that Maha would always have my best interest at heart.
Mm.
So it's never, as a partner, that's a big thing if you can have that in a partner, because otherwise you're always second guessing. I never ever have to even, consider that at all, because I know she will always have
Yeah.
my best interest at heart, and we know each other so well. So if one is going through a tough time, the other one can cover for her. So we can do that for each other. We help each other out. Plus, like you just said, with your daughter, when a daughter is a teenager, that's a whole different ballgame.
This is true.
Now Maha is a grown-up woman.
Yeah.
So now we are friends now. That phase is a tough one to go through, but they all grow up and it becomes much
Yeah.
easier. So I can assure you of that. It'll become much easier as they grow older,
Farah,
and
can
it'll
you
become
tell
much.
that she went through something when I was a teenager?
No,
This is true. You can look at
no.
that phase as in the past, but still acknowledging its existence.
But it
Well,
No,
is
but
so
that's how
true.
it is.
It really is, because we kind of have, you're talking about your daughter and seeing her every day, and then you're also her teacher. I haven't lived in Pakistan since I was,
true. Yeah.
right? So it's insane for me to think about, because when I view myself as Pakistani and I'm from Pakistan, but now officially half my life I've almost lived in the
Wow.
US.
Yeah.
So that for me is crazy to think about. But the reason for mentioning that is, Saman and I have had very almost separate lives, but we've
Ah,
always had this connection. And I think
mm,
that um, maybe distance really does make the heart grow fonder or something like that. But
100%.
you really
Yeah.
have to make so much effort when you're in
Yeah.
physically different locations to stay in touch and to keep that bond going. And I think that if we've done
Mm,
that for 15 years, and she's like, she's my best friend, like I think if you can do that for so long, then I think it's a testament to, hey, maybe we can also start a business together. If those
yeah.
15
Yeah.
years there had been other things going on, and then don't get me wrong, it's some mother daughter relationship. Like, you argue and you fight, and it's
Yeah.
like a co-founder relationship where you're formal. If you're kind, and she knows I have her back and I know she has my back, but she also knows, like, we can also fight and argue and yell at each other
Yeah.
the same way that we probably wouldn't with a co-founder. So there are pros and cons, but I think as you grow older, the relationship as mother daughter changes so much. Like,
Yeah.
it's not as much. I constantly have to tell her what to do. I have to tell her what's right or wrong and show her this and be a good example. It's like you almost let the guards down. Like, I felt
Huh.
that a lot.
Yeah.
I think I started feeling that a little bit, especially in my early 20s, where I was like, oh, this is my mother. Like, she doesn't have to always be
Yeah.
together, because she was so on top of it, for I can't tell you. Like,
Mm.
3 kids, and she was so organized. She was at every, like, school drop off, every school pickup, every sports game, every drama.
Mm.
Like, now I think about it, I'm like, I can barely take care of myself.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's a
No, but
very
it was.
complicated
No,
way
but
of
it's
saying the
beautiful.
relationship
It
is
is
beautiful.
true.
Yeah.
There's a
But the relationship
vulnerability.
evolves, like we are now more like equals. So that's how we
Yeah.
can be friends, and there's no judging. That's the biggest thing. Maha
Hmm.
has her own very independent life in the US, while I have mine in Lahore. So it's not the same. It's very, very different, but yet we can be just as close.
Beautiful. Let's take a break and then we're going to jump into everything, Sanaya. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and today we are speaking with co-founders, who also happen to be mother and daughter, Saman and Maha. And we've been hearing so much about the personal into professional journey that the two of you have had. And now let's talk about this essential baby that you birthed. And let's talk about this company. So, again, we talked a little bit about why you started going into this particular industry. It is looking like Maha is frozen. So we may have lost her. Hopefully she will come back on. But Summon, I will have you there for there. Okay, I'm sure she will join us back in just a moment. But so reading a little bit about the company on your website and information that you shared with us, you talked about why the name. And of course, I got a chance to read that, thought that was so beautiful. But if either of you can talk about why did you name the company what you did?
Yes. Maha, can I go? Okay. So the word Seenaya, the letter S, in Urdu, that's seen. So the seen is the first part of our name. That's seen because my name starts with an S. My mother's name starts with an S. My grandmother's name starts with an S, and so does my sister's. So it's basically a whole family of names with that start with S, so hence the scene. And the Naya is the new, the rejuvenation of skin. So that goes with it, and hence we came up with that name. And that's why our short logo is also the letter seen in Urdu. So, and that's why we came up with that.
Love that. Love that. Now, when did you actually launch the company?
So we started working on the company after basically both of us graduated. So someone graduated a couple months before me, but in basically summer 2022, we started ideating and working on Seenaya, and we worked on those products for 2 years. And in those 2 years, we did like a feedback study of 100 people. We basically sent them our samples, asked for feedback, and then we publicly launched our website and everything, to everyone on in November 2024. So just a few months back.
Okay, so this is a newborn.
Absolutely,
yes,
yeah.
it is.
Mubarak, that is so exciting.
Right. It's funny because it's new, but we've been working on it for so long. So it's kind of like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
Yes, but the
So
formulations took forever. The
I can
formulation part with
imagine.
yeah, the scent of the serum, everything was like I think how many iterations did we do, Maha? Around
We
40,
had like
50?
50 plus.
50, yeah, 50, yeah. So that's
And
why there was a lot of back and forth.
are the products themselves, are they formulated in Pakistan or where do you, yes, tell me a little bit about, because it is always interesting when you have a footprint in multiple places and there is, of course, cultural representation and heritage through these products. So tell me a little bit about that connection.
Well, that was a whole process. So we
Mm,
started off basically, Saman and I, and we told you about our journey and talking to family
yeah.
and thinking about the specific ingredients that we wanted to include. We knew we wanted to do a brightening serum and a clarifying serum. And so thinking about ingredients that really, really catered to those solutions. So we found our hero ingredients for those two serums, and we went to a South Asian formulator. She actually previously worked at L'Oreal.
Ah,
She kind of helped us put a lot of these ingredients together into actual serums. Then eventually we went to a proper R&D lab and finalized our serums with them, and they were the ones that helped us eventually manufacture. So it kind of like,
wow.
started in Pakistan, somewhere in the middle, and then landed up in North America.
Okay, amazing. And now, so you have it's skincare products is what it is. And is it, how are you selling them? Are they online sales exclusively? Yeah, tell me anything about the
Yes.
marketplace.
That's right. It's all online through our website right now. So Seenaya.com, Seenaya.com. And definitely would recommend to follow us on Instagram at Seenaya Official, and also join our email list, which you can do on the website, because we will be going out and selling through other channels. So would love for stay tuned in a couple months.
I just want to add something here about the
Please.
ingredients. It's not just that we used any ingredients, they were all natural, and the ones that we had previously used ourselves. So, most ingredients that you usually would not see in North America, like radish seed oil or
Hmm.
amla, I know some of the Indian brands are using them, but specifically the radish seed oil, that was something very
Yeah.
new, and the scents that we added to it. So, we came a long way with that. So originally we started from Pakistan, but then the ingredients were special and all natural as well. And we didn't want to use too many with the clutter of too many scents and oils in it because they're all oil based. So we are using less than about a dozen ingredients in our products.
Amazing.
So that really helps it keep it simple, but yet it's very effective.
And you mentioned it would be categorized as clean beauty.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And just to go back, I'm sorry, my head is a little fuzzy, so apologies if you said this. I know you said we could purchase online. Do you ship worldwide, or how is that?
We're shipping to the US and Canada for now.
Okay, okay, good to
If
know.
there are any special listeners based in Pakistan, we can figure out a way to get to you. We are lucky enough that we are following worldwide guidelines. We're halal certified. We are
Beautiful.
following EU guidelines, so it's very easy for us to take our products across the world.
Yeah, we've
Well,
just started out, so that's why it's just we're just 2, 3 months old. That's why we've started
sure.
out in North America, but we've made sure that we have all the certifications that we need for the Middle
Amazing.
East and Europe, so that we don't have to go back to the drawing board every time. So we have all the required certifications to launch wherever we want in the world.
Amazing. And this is when I get to have conversations with artists, creatives, entrepreneurs. And I think again, it's probably because of the perspective that I come from of being in those spaces myself. But I think what I always really love to open the window to for our listeners is there's the product and or the service, and then there's all of the logistics and the infrastructure that's required to
Oh,
actually
yes.
get it out. And so we're talking certifications. I mean, again, you're working in two different continents, two different countries, the regulations, I mean, this could be a conversation in and of itself, but God knows the US is in a funky state, to
Oh,
say
yes.
the least. And so just anything you want to, again, we talked about certification, but just trials, tribulations around even what kind of support do you have outside of the two of you as far as other team members, anything like that. I think that these nuggets of sharing the experiences, the good and the bad, if you will, is just the insight that I really hope to offer our listeners. So anything you'd like to reflect on in relation to that?
Yeah. Um,
No,
I think Maha, you want to
go
go
ahead.
first? Okay, I just wanted to mention that it's not just that we're working in two countries. We're
Yeah.
getting our product made in Canada as well as in the US, but we're getting glass from China. The ingredients are from all over the world. So basically, it's like a small
Yeah.
UN, you know, working,
Right?
trying to work. But what has helped is that, the world has become a global village. So it's easier. We can source our ingredients from Brazil, from Europe, from anywhere we want, and we can still do that. Getting glass from China is not difficult anymore. So and COVID has really helped with all these,
Yeah.
Zoom meetings, and so we can talk to our manufacturers anywhere in the world, get our ingredients from anywhere in the world, the packaging, the design. So we can source from anywhere, which I don't think even a decade ago was much harder to do. So
Yes.
that has been really helpful for us.
Beautiful.
And I
Yeah.
think, Farah, in terms of, I 100% agree with Saman. I think the quality of the product, the quality of the ingredients, I mean, like the world really is our oyster. Of course, someone mentioned that some of our products are coming from Canada and some are coming from China. So, as you know, with the
Right.
situation, it can be very, very scary. I think within a day you can find out that your margins are cut in half, and
Yeah.
as a very small business, you don't have the funds. We are still bootstrapped. We don't have the funds to make very quick decisions because a lot of times we have to buy into longer term contracts for them to be affordable for us. So, working around that, thinking about that, I think what really helps is having a good relationship. I know it seems so silly, but just having a good relationship with your suppliers, with your manufacturers, and
Mm,
talking to them like a human, like, hey, this is
yeah.
my mother and I, this is our business, this is our livelihood right now. And to be honest, the manufacturer that we're working with, they also started up, I want to say in 2018 or 2019. So they're a pretty fresh business, and they understand. And we went through a process of reaching out to, oh my gosh, Farah, I think it was close to like 100 contract manufacturers before we settled on
Yeah.
one. So we really, really did our diligence to find not someone who would just make our product, but someone who would partner with us and partner with
Mm,
us through the difficult times. And there's been so much going on right now, and we're so grateful that we have partners that are really helping us through it. But at the same time, that's the good case scenario. There are
mm,
bad case scenarios. There was a time where we really felt passionate. We said we want to manufacture our products in Pakistan. And as you were talking about with the regulations, we spent about 9 months on that. We even picked a manufacturer, and
uh,
regulations and everything, it just wasn't possible. It was almost seeming like I think our launch is going to be delayed years, if
wow.
even
Yeah.
more, because this is going to take so long to set up. And it was a really, really difficult decision to pull out of that relationship. But at
Mm,
the end of the day, I think Saman and I always tell each other, you know, what is the decision that's going to help us sleep at night? And I think at that early stage, that partner was not one that we felt that level of comfort with. I think it was too much
yeah.
for us to take on in the beginning. So I think that's a long-winded way of saying take the time to do your diligence with partners, but also if you know that a partner is not right, your gut feeling
Mm,
is probably right. And maybe
Yeah.
don't wait
mm,
9 months like we did, even though I'm very proud that we made that decision eventually and pulled out, and it was absolutely the right decision. But sometimes you just need to follow your gut. Not everything, I'm a numbers person. My mother is also a numbers person. And so
yeah.
I think sometimes when we're like, no, but the math and this makes sense, but it's like, no, like
Yeah.
this doesn't feel right. So I think that's, uh, coming from two MBAs, you're probably like, what did you do getting those MBAs if you're just following that and, saying all these cushy feely things. But I really think that's an important part of running a business.
Mm. I'd love to just let's take our final pause on that. That's a very important point. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah, and we've been having such an enjoyable conversation today with Saman Khan and Maha Khan, co-founders of Seenaya. And I've just, it's been such a joy. I really appreciate your transparency, both about, your individual and collective journey to get here, about the process of, the backstory of the company, both again on the personal front and as you're moving through it. I think it's important to own those for what they are. And again, the excitement in being this company that is now has launched, products are available. And again, if folks are interested in learning more about the company and shopping the products, the website is Seenaya, SEENAYA.com. And you do sell and ship currently to North America, specifically Canada and the US. So, and again, follow them on Instagram as well. Well, I love to end my conversations with each of my guests sort of with a little bit of a reflection, if you will, and asking you to reflect on this concept of heartistry. So it's the word heart and artistry put together. And for me, that's really been about speaking with individuals who are bringing a passion, compassion, and commitment to whatever they're doing. Clearly, we've heard so much about that and how and why this was such a wonderful fit to have you on the podcast. But what I'm always curious is whether when you heard or saw the word heartistry, or as I'm speaking about it now, what, if anything, it invokes for each of you? So, someone, why don't we start with you?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, Farah. Uh, For me, I think artistry is how you express what is important to you. No judgments, no restrictions. I remember a quote by the famous artist Matisse. He said, "Creativity takes courage." So you've got to have the courage to take off the mask and to be real. In our case, as in the case of Seenaya, it's just helping people feel good in their skin. So to me, basically, it's aligning your soul and values is what artistry is all about for me.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Maha.
That's going to be hard to top, Farah.
Agreed.
It's interesting because I think when I first heard about Heartistry and came across all the work that you were doing, I was thinking, does it make sense for two business people to be on Heartistry? Because I was looking all these wonderful, qualified, creatives and artists and filmmakers and architects and all kinds of people. And I realized, and I was like, no, I think every single part of the business process requires this concept of artistry, which is, I think, to me, just passion and, like someone said, soul in a process. Because I think any process that requires any kind of thinking out of the box or creativity is a process of art, right? If you in a business sense, think about our packaging. Sometimes, honestly, even I know it sounds so silly, but thinking about our supply chain feels like a work of art sometimes,
100%.
trying to get it to work these days. And so I think to me, it was just bringing that passion and that soul into every single process that you're really working on, whether it's business, whether it's personal. And I think that um, it's funny to say this, but I think it's something that actually someone really embodied and tried to instill in us when we were when me and my brothers were younger, because I think a lot of kids around us, they were, for example, studying to get the A on the exam or something like that. And I think she always said, understand it. And how are you going to use this? And so even just that process, that little extra bit of creativity, that extra little bit of, I think, thinking outside the box really embodies that concept of artistry for me.
Ah, well, this is not a competition, but I'm gonna also say what you said was just simply fabulous. And,
Thank you.
no, really, Maha, I think that so much of the reason I do like to speak to people who don't necessarily see themselves as artists or creatives is exactly what you said. It's kind of this intention of hoping that even through this conversation, you're able to see in yourselves that there is a artistic flow that comes through,
Yes.
just about any and everything we do, whether it's cooking a meal, whether it's, and it's not about the artistic output that we have come to categorize art as, but it's really what does it mean to be in that flow? And I think it does exist in everything. So you encapsulated that so beautifully. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it has been such a joy to learn a little bit more about each of you individually, collectively. I am certainly inspired by the mother-daughter journey, not just because of my hopes and dreams for my own, but no, I don't want to I don't want to downplay. It is a really beautiful thing to see people within the same family of the different generations come together in this way, to work together so beautifully, to want to share that beauty quite literally with others. And, I wish you the best of luck with this company. And I so look forward to seeing it flourish in all the ways possible. And thank you for your time today on Heartistry.
Thank
Thank you
you so
so
much,
much.
Farah.
Really
It was really
appreciate the
a pleasure.
time.